Alright, so today I'm doing a mild upgrade and tune-up to G&G combat machine Sandhog from ASGI. First part there is installing the sector clip on the sector gear using super glue to make sure it stays in place. Other parts I'm going to be installing are a modify Airseal nozzle, which you're not going to see. Already in the gearbox there are the modify stainless steel bushings, which you should get those, they'll never break. Next part here is doing the shimming. You can see there the forward assist anti-reversal latch release combo there gets in the way of the sector gear, or no, the spur gear if you use too big shims that are too big. So use smaller shims on that. And in general, screw the gearbox together every time you go to check your shimming, because if you don't, and it's perfectly shimmed, when you go to screw your gearbox together, the gears just aren't going to move because it's pressed in that much more that you can't do with your bare hands. And then it'll cause your motor to light on fire because it won't be able to move, and then you're out whatever amount of money you just spent on parts. Let's see, I use bushings over bearings just because bearings are, you can get a little bit faster rate of fire because they go a lot smoother, but the trade-off is it's one more part that can break, whereas bushings will basically never break. The only issue you get is if you're shimmed improperly, they wear out on the inside. Next part here is checking the trigger shuttle. The original problem with this was that the trigger shuttle would stick in place, and that was due to the housing being slightly too wide, so I just sanded that down. Here I'm putting dielectric grease on the trigger shuttle itself just to get some of that mechanical arc, or that electrical arcing that you get with no matter what battery you use, and mitigate that a little bit. It just in general protects your trigger contact. Next part here is installing some Sorbothane. I do this for any gun I want to make a little quieter. Pretty much any version 2 gearbox that I do. I use 70 Duro Sorbothane. It's hard enough that it's not gonna be. Basically, the harder the Sorbothane is, the more consistent it's gonna deform when your piston head strikes it. So I would use like a softer Sorbo on like a semi-auto only rifle that you want to go really quiet down, whereas on a support weapon or an M4 like a general rifle, use a harder Sorbo to keep it from acting weird. And then I'm just trimming off the edges just so that it doesn't form an uneven surface on the inside of the cylinder head. Next part is right here. I'm marking where the little notch cut out of the blowback cylinder is on the cylinder I'm replacing it with, so it'll fit inside of the gearbox, because the gearbox has an extra little ridge where the cylinder fits. And you don't ever want to take material off of the gearbox because it will break on you, and it's just a bad idea. Here I'm using a Dremel to just cut the brass down to just make sure that shape is in there. And then the next part of this is deburring it using a deburring tool. What that does is make sure all those little edges that I just cut are perfectly smooth, so that you don't get any sharp edges inside of the cylinder messing with your piston head and O-ring. After this, I actually don't show it because it wouldn't be a point, but I actually go clean it out in the sink just to make sure all those little metal particles are out of there, so they're not like messing with your rifle. Let's see, here is starting the angle of engagement check, cutting off the little knobs on the top of the G&G piston. What an angle of engagement check does is turn the angular force put on the pickup tooth of the piston by the sector gear into more of a shear force, And if you know physics, or if you're about to get into physics, or you're going to be in high school in a few years taking physics, it creates a lot. It takes a lot more force to break something in a shear force mechanic than it does with an angular force. Think of like bending a piece of spaghetti versus trying to push your piece of spaghetti past itself. It's kind of hard to explain. I'm a little silly. There is the rubber washer that I always use. You can get it at Home Depot, like pack of 10 for like $1 or something ridiculous. Trimming down the second tooth using a high-speed cutter on my Dremel, just to make sure that the pickup tooth is the only tooth to actually be engaged, or the pickup tooth is the first tooth engaged rather than that tooth right there that I'm trimming. Because when the piston's pushed back that far, you can run into an issue where the Sector 2 gear will actually hit that tooth I'm trimming right now. And that's bad. It throws off your timing, and you'll strip your piston in no time flat. You can see, or maybe you can't actually, it's pretty much hitting it at the exact right angle you want when you're doing an angle of engagement check now, with the combination of the Sorbo and the rubber washer. Next part here, I'm polishing, not trimming, polishing all of the rail surfaces on the inside of the gearbox for the piston and the tappet plate, just to make sure they travel perfectly smoothly. No, I'm not gonna show it just because there's no reason to show how to reassemble an M4. Reassemble an M4, there's really no reason to, but after this I'm pretty much done. So I put the rifle together and chrono it. Here I'm putting a little bit of silicone grease on the inner lip of the piston head, and then again a little bit of silicone grease on the actual O-ring itself, just to make sure that whole assembly is lightly greased, and you get that rock solid air seal that utilizes all your spring's potential energy. Now that's on an 11-1. And there's the chrono. Now the first shot was a little low, and I actually chronoed it again after this and was getting like 402, 403.